Bursley Hall is a first-year dormitory located on North Campus at University of Michigan. It is the university's largest dorm, housing around 1,300 students at any given time, and it's where I was placed my first year there. The dorm is divided into 8 residential halls, all connected by a single central area containing offices, the dining hall, and also this. At one point while I was exploring Bursley, I ended up stumbling across this weird panel right next to the boiler room in the sub-basement, and opening it, I thought, well, this is probably a control panel, only to realize it was a 16-inch by 16-inch opening leading underneath the stairs to this very remote little hidey hole beneath all of Bursley. Looking around in there was scary. I had no idea what was down there. I couldn't see anything, so I had to come back with a headlamp. And when I went inside, I realized this is actually a decently large space. I wonder if I could use this. So that's what I tried to do. Over the next year or so, I cleared out a bunch of trash that was in there, probably over 100 pounds worth of bricks, cinder blocks, a random plank of wood, a rusty metal pole, some twine, just all kinds of weird stuff. And the ground was also littered with dust, debris, broken glass. A lot of things in it also were just very rough around the edges. There were cement drippings all over the floor, which meant that it wasn't level. There were drippings between the bricks around the walls, which also made the walls really rugged and uncomfortable to lean against. So I took a hammer. I ended up smashing all of the drippings and sweeping them into a dustpan and throwing those out as well. I also noticed on a couple occasions a little bit of leakage from one of the pipes. Not enough to make the area wet, but enough to make it a little damp in some places, and occasionally I would find a millipede here or there. So I ended up buying myself some damp rid, laying it down there. All of a sudden, the place became a lot drier, and the bugs were gone. During this process, I tried to furnish it with whatever I could find. The first order of business was to make it a bit easier to navigate in the dark, as for a very long time I was only using my headlamp. So I got myself some battery-powered Christmas lights and hung them up around the ceiling so when I went inside I could see. I also taped the battery pack to the inside of the door so that you could turn on the lights on your way in and turn them off on your way out. I also noticed that the ceiling was magnetic, so I stuck a bunch of refrigerator magnets to the ceiling just for decoration. And just for the heck of it, because there was absolutely no light down there, I thought it would be hilarious and ridiculous to put some fake plants in there, which I did. On top of that, I went and I bought myself a few posters, hung those up around the walls, and generally tried to make it look as friendly of a space as possible. This was partly me just trying to see what I could do with a space that had initially been absolutely terrifying to look at before, and people would look and think, there's no way I'm crawling in that. Once you crawled in, there was decoration everywhere, nice rainbow lights, and it just looked a lot more friendly. Sometime during the process of me making these changes, some other students found this place, left a guest book, and we started writing messages back and forth to each other. Over the course of our communications, we decided to name this area the Crypt, based on how dark, remote, and dry it was. We also discussed different ideas for things we could do to the crypt to make it more hospitable. For instance, I wanted to add padding around the entrance so that you wouldn't skin yourself going in or out. This wasn't too much of an issue for me since I was really skinny, but there were a lot of people that had trouble getting in and out, and plenty of people couldn't fit in there at all. I also wanted to mount more powerful lights around the space, just to make it easier to see what was going on, because the Christmas lights didn't provide very much more than the bare minimum of ambient light. I also had an end goal of covering the entire ceiling with magnets, so that you actually couldn't see the metal of the ceiling at all. Also, because the cement on the floor was very uninviting, I decided to tile the floor. I got myself a bunch of tile glue, some tiles, and got to work. It was a difficult process because the space wasn't actually in whole feet, so I actually planned to cut some of the tiles so that they would fit the area better. I did notice some things that looked like drainage pipes down there, so I purposefully didn't glue tiles down over those. Instead, I just laid the tiles down so that they could be peeled back easily if they needed to be accessed. The crypt also had an area that was directly under the stairs, meaning that the ceiling would become lower as you crawled further in. I wanted this to be more of a storage space, so the plan was to get a bead curtain in there to divide it so that you would have a hangout space and then some other things stored in there. I also noticed that because the space was exceptionally dark, if you wanted to project a movie in there, you could do it without ambient light ruining the image. And of course, if people wanted to lounge around down there, I had decided that getting beanbag cushions in there would make it much easier to lounge around. Pretty much no other kind of furniture would fit in there because the space itself was 16 inches by 16 inches. But this gave me another idea. I wanted to get a piece of IKEA furniture, take all of the pieces inside, then assemble it and glue them together so that no one could remove the furniture from the space. I thought this was a really hilarious idea, a weird ship in a bottle type thing. And on top of all of this fun stuff, I actually collected a sample of all of the dust down there and wanted to send it off for asbestos testing, because I had read that Bursley did have asbestos in it. To the best of my understanding, the crypt was built when Bursley was built, and has been mostly undisturbed for almost exactly 50 years. I say this based off of the vintage beer cans I found inside of the space, which were presumably left there by construction workers that worked on the building. This would also make sense because there were a bunch of construction materials inside the space. But with everyone being afraid of lawsuits all the time, eventually an RA found out about the space, told the campus security, and had the area sealed. Over the course of the next few weeks, I talked with someone in conflict resolution, tried to make an appeal for this space to be opened again, and I did eventually get most of my stuff out, except for the tiles, since those were actually fixed to the floor. But I would really like to see this place open back up again. Spaces like these end up becoming an open secret, and I realized that the potential of this space would have been amazing if it had ever reached its full potential. It's really a shame that right now people are always afraid of lawsuits and they have to make sure that students can never hurt themselves using anything. And I shouldn't really be surprised. My first year at Bursley, someone decided to build a swing hanging from a tree branch, and even that was taken down because the administration was worried some kid would fall off of it and get hurt. So, what's the point of all of this? I think it's just that I want people to know that this space is there, and that I wanted it to be some sort of legacy to leave behind, and if it ever makes sense in the future for it to be opened again, I would like to see that happen.